Just before we get into this video, guys, a quick little bit of housekeeping. The film and TV industry is something I've wanted to break into for years now. I studied for university, getting myself a BA and MA in the subject. Sadly though, trying to find work has been next to impossible, which is why I created this, my website. It's been up for a few years now, and the idea is to try and find more work within the film and TV industry. On it you can find my portfolio, as well as my showreel and much more. All I need from you guys is to share it around as much as possible, but only if you enjoy the videos. The more you share, the more videos I will make for this channel. You don't have to be a regular viewer here, and you don't even need to subscribe, just share the website around and I'll be happy. Now, on with the video. On today's episode of my Isolation podcast, the DCU has finally begun with James Gunn's Superman, so let's take a look back at the last time DC tried making a cinematic universe. This is the Fall of the DCEU. Hello everyone and welcome back to an episode of my Isolation podcast, one of the best media-related podcasts you've definitely ever heard of until right now. My name is Connor, thank you so much for tuning in, and today let's talk about the fall of the DCEU, because the DCU begins this week, begins tomorrow actually, because I think in the UK anyways, Superman 2025 comes out tomorrow, because this is being recorded on the 10th of July. No idea when this is going to be uploaded, hopefully before tomorrow, if I can get this edited in time. Pray for me. But yeah, today we are going to be talking about the DCEU, or rather the fall of the DCEU. Looking back at the last 10 plus years that the DCEU ran from 2013 to 2023, and just looking at what happened, how did it become the disaster that it is today, and what led to it, being rebooted and starting over from scratch. I've said this before. I think I said this when I did the review of The Flash back in 2023, but I think the DCEU will go down in history as one of, if not the biggest disaster in the history of cinema. I generally do believe that, because this thing has been a disaster from the very beginning, from the very start. In case anyone's wondering why this isn't called the Rise and Fall of the DCEU, you have to actually rise first in order to do that, and the DCEU never really rose to the occasion. It kind of just fell, kind of just kept tumbling down a hill. Had some spikes, went up a few times, but it just collapsed, and by the end of it, and kind of fell into obscurity, to the point where people just didn't bother turning up to any of their movies. It was kind of one of those things where WB have got so used to shelving films for tax write-offs that you'd think they would have done that to the last two DCU films just to not show them because of how badly they've bombed or flopped or was critically received. DC is one of those companies that back in the day they were kind of, I won't say the kings of comic book movies, but they were definitely kind of the pioneer. They were definitely, compared to other companies who had their characters adapted into films, they were definitely more on top. You had the Christopher Reeve Superman films, or at least the first two. You had Tim Burton's Batman, which did eventually fall with Batman and Robin. But then you had Batman Begins and the Dark Knight trilogy, and just all this other good stuff as well. So I think for a time they were kind of the better kind of half of comic book movies, and eventually that kind of changed. But around 2008 that kind of changed, and cinematic universe became a thing, and DC wanted to kind of put their stamp on the cinematic universe trend, and by doing that, and unfortunately it didn't really work out, at least not for the first time. Hopefully the second go will work out. So let's start off by looking at how it began with Man of Steel and how it ended with Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Man of Steel is a film that when I first saw it, I really liked it. But the problem with that is that I was 18, and 18-year-old me did not have a good taste in movies. 18-year-old me thought Star Trek Into Darkness was a good film. 19-year-old me thought The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was a good film. 19-year-old me was kind of mixed on it, and it was the same thing in Man of Steel as well. And the thing with Man of Steel is that I've not actually rewatched it in years. I can't even remember the last time I rewatched Man of Steel. Before yesterday, when I was rewatching it to make notes for this podcast. And look, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. I'm sorry, DC fans. I'm sorry, DCEU fans. I'm sorry, Henry Cavill fans, and I'm sorry, Snyder fans. But I don't like Man of Steel anymore. After rewatching it yesterday, my God, was it just terrible. The action sequences they looked really pretty, but they were too flashy and kind of too clean. I think they need a bit more grit to them. I will say Zack Snyder does a good job with his cinematography, making everything look very pretty and very beautiful. I didn't really like how he spent a lot of time on Krypton, or I don't know how. Well, I mean, I'm not sure how long it was compared to the first Christopher Reeve film, but it definitely kind of felt like we didn't need to go this deep into Krypton. Really, I mean, we didn't have to go. We didn't have to take this long to get to Superman's origin. Superman's origin. We all know his origin. His planet dies. It blows up. He comes to Earth. That's it. That's his origin. That's his origin right there. That's his origin right there. I didn't. I feel like the whole Krypton thing felt a bit dragged out, and I didn't think that. I like Michael Shannon as an actor, but I thought he was a terrible General Zod. I thought that for a General Zod that was supposed to be more, like darker and grittier, and kind of me taking him a bit more seriously. There were too many times when he just came off as too goofy and too silly. Which, don't get me wrong, this is Superman we're talking about here. He's supposed to be goofy, and he's supposed to be it's supposed to be silly and supposed to be goofy. But this film is supposed to be the darker, grittier take on the character, and there were too many times with General Zod that just felt way too goofy, way too silly. Like there were times when he literally acted like more like a bulldog than anything else, which kind of sounds kind of mean, but it's like yeah, it's like you've got scenes like when he shouts, "I will find him." Superman is like fighting him in the air, and he's like, "Oh, you think you can threaten my mother?" And then I think, oh no, actually no, I think it's like the final fight when when he puts his hand on Zod's head, and Zod just lets out this weird scream. Even during that fight as well, when he's climbing up the building like a orangutan or something, and it's like, what? It was this supposed to be taken seriously? Because this is more funny than anything else, and very unintentionally funny. Kevin Costner did an okay job as Jonathan Kent, but some of the dialogue as well, like the scene where he's like, "Oh, you should keep your side of this a secret. Maybe you shouldn't have saved those kids on the bus." That's not what Jonathan Kent would have done. That's not what Pa Kent would have done. Pa Kent would have been like, "Good job, Clark. You're changing into a good person, the person that you want to be." And on all that stuff, and then on that later scene where Clark is getting bullied and by the school bullies, and his dad's just kind of standing there and kind of just like watching it happen, and it's kind of like, that's your kid getting picked on, like intervene, race over, be like, "Oi, stop picking on my kid, what are you doing?" Like, I know my kid's got superpowers, but still, that's my son. um what else as well? His death was really stupid. I'm sorry, man. Like this, again, this is supposed to be the dark and gritty take on the character, and yet he dies by getting sucked into a tornado. Really, like like in the first Superman film with Christopher Reeve, Park Kent's, or John Kent's, depending on how you want to call him. His death was more impactful in that film because it was just it was a heart attack. He died of natural causes, and that was something that Superman couldn't save him from. And that's what made his death even more powerful. But this one, it's like, first of all, number one, Superman could have easily saved you from this. Like his whole thing of, "No, Clark, you must keep this side of yourself a secret." It's like, first of all, he can like move really fast. Like Superman and the Flash literally have a race at the end of Justice League. Like he can move at the speed of sound. Like he could easily zip over, grab him, zip back. Like no one would have even noticed. No one would have even blinked an eye because they were probably too busy looking at the fucking tornado and being like, "Oh my God, is it coming for us?" And it's like, and it's just like, nah, man. Like if I was like Jonathan Kent and I was in that situation, I'd just be like, "Right, get your super ass over here. You save me right now because I'm your dad." Like, yeah, there's no, I don't give a shit about your secret. You're saving my ass. I'm not getting sucked into a fucking tornado. um, what else as well? What else was really dumb? But yeah, like it just didn't feel like Superman. You know what I mean? Like Superman is supposed to be goofy. It's supposed to be silly. He's supposed to be lighthearted. We didn't need this like drawn out uh, origin story that tried like portraying him as a god. and all that stuff. We need something that's more akin to what James Gunn is doing now, which is a Superman that's more, you know, lighthearted, more goofy, and more focused on hope and optimism and all that stuff. Like, that's the kind of Superman that we really need, and that's kind of Superman that we always kind of really need. And that's not to say a darker take wouldn't have been more interesting, but I just think that I just looking at it now, look at like on paper, a darker take of Superman may have been interesting, but in execution, not so much. It just felt like it just felt like an edgy 15-year-old kind of take on Superman. And there were some things in it that I liked. You know, like some of the flashbacks were cool, although having them be told out of order wasn't. I don't think that was really a. I don't think that was a really good move. It kind of comes off really distracting, and you know, you're getting into the scene, and then suddenly, whoop, flashback, and it's just kind of like, you know, just do it. If you're gonna copy Batman Begins, just copy Batman Begins. Just have it be told in order. Don't have it be out of order. I get what they were going for. Like, he sees something and it triggers a memory in his mind, like you know, like at the like in the very start when he's like on the oil rig, all the boat, and he's saving those people, and the boat explodes, and he's in the water, and he remembers. I think he's like hearing like the sound of the whales and stuff, or in the water, and that kind of triggers a memory of how when he first started discovering his powers, he couldn't get used to them. Um, and he ran and hid inside a cupboard, and that was a really nice and really sweet scene between him and Martha Kent as well. Um, or how he looks at a bus and he thinks back to the people in the school. Um, and stuff like that. But I guess I don't know. It was just kind of like they should have just been told in order. I think having it just be like, I get what they were going for. He sees something that triggers a memory, but I just think at the end of the day, it just didn't work, basically, and it just kind of came as distracting and kind of just ruined the flow of the narrative, in my opinion. I know there's some people out there who love these flashbacks, and that's fine. And I think that, but obviously, we all know what happened. Man of Steel didn't get reviewed very well critically, and fan wise, it was very mixed received. The Snyder fanboys will tell you otherwise, but I was there at the time of this discourse, and I can tell you right now, this film's critical reception was very mixed with both critics and fans. Of Superman, yeah, the critics were, I think, and now it has like what 55% on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that. And then the actual fans of Superman, the comic book nerds and stuff, were very mixed on it as well. Some liked the darker take, some didn't like the darker take. And it just kind of, it doesn't really feel like the start of a cinematic universe. I think that's kind of also what this film didn't really feel like, as well. And it kind of feels like the whole cinematic universe elements, like, you know, the Wayne Incorporated like logos and stuff. They kind of felt very. It kind of just felt very last minute in a way. Like this wasn't supposed to be the start of a cinematic universe. It was supposed to be like a kind of a. It was kind of supposed to be another standalone Superman film, similar to the Dark Knight trilogy, and um, and then 2012 happened, and cinematic universes were at their kind of rise and their peak, and DC were like, nah, screw it, let's make this a start of our cinematic universe. Let's maybe go back and reshoot some things and all that good stuff. And it's not really a great foundation. I think the problem with another problem with Man of Steel is that it's not a great foundation to begin a cinematic universe on. If you're going to start a cinematic universe, you want that first entry in the cinematic universe to be great. You need it to be amazing. You need it to be fantastic. You need it to be received as well as possible, and which is what the new Superman film was getting. When I looked at the Rotten Tomatoes score for the new Superman film, I was like, yes, it's getting good reviews, it's getting good reactions, because there was a brief period there where the Daily Beast claimed it was the final nail in the superhero genre's coffin. You've called that one, Daily Beast. Well done. And there was another review that leaked that was negative. But then obviously this wave of positive reviews has definitely swayed, and I think ticket sales will probably go up, and hopefully this film will make money, and we'll all be happy. We'll all be happy. We'll get a new DCU for the next 10 years, and hopefully it'll actually lead to something, and it won't end on a downer. Like how the DCU ended with Aquaman and Lost Kingdom. An awful ending to the DCU. I get that it wasn't supposed to be. Um, at the ending to the DCEU. I get they had plans afterwards to do a Crisis on Infinite Earths film, and this film was reshot like 4 times because the plan just kept changing over and over again. And I guess Tessa Waynes just hated every single cut of this film as well, because it wasn't, which probably led to it being reshot 4 times. But then again, that doesn't really make any sense because the Flash, all of the Flash's like cuts were received positively by test audiences, and that film still got reshot a bunch of times, like 4 or 5 times, I think. And um, and it's just a terrible ending. It's just very dull, and the action just feels very generic. And most of these action sequences, I'm like, I've seen this before in like other superhero films, and I've seen it done better. That's what the problem, and that's pretty much Lost Kingdom as a whole. I've seen this before, but I've seen it done better. The brother dynamic between Aquaman and his brother, seen it before, and I've seen it done better. Action sequences, seen it done before, seen it done better. Villain who wants to avenge his father, seen it done before, and I've seen it done better. And that's kind of what it just feels like. They were just kind of like, let's just make it very by the numbers, by the books. We don't care anymore. Even the ending, like when Aquaman goes, "I am Aquaman" to like like an audience of thousands of people. Again, I've seen it before, and I've seen it done a lot better. Like, and it's just a terrible, terrible ending. And the fact that this was kind of the 10-year mark of the DCEU, when you get to your 10-year mark, you cinematic universe, we should have been at our like fourth or fifth Justice League film, and we should have really been wrapping up what this first saga or chapter, or whatever they should have used as the structure for the cinematic universe. That would have been wrapping up, and then we would have started the next saga or chapter or something like that. We would have been, like undoing all the tying up all the loose ends and stuff. But Aquaman and Lost Kingdom doesn't even do that. This one was reshot 4 times. 4 times it was reshot, and like you seriously telling me they couldn't have done like a quick little ending where when he's giving his speech about heroes and stuff like that, maybe we could have had it cut to like all the other Justice League members kind of doing their thing and saving the unit, saving the day and stuff. And you could have worked around, like you could have like just had back shots of Superman like fighting some villain or enemy, and shots of Wonder Woman doing something else. And then I guess since this is technically the same continuity as the Flash, it would have been George Clooney's Batman doing something heroic rather than Ben Affleck's Batman. But then again, I don't know. I know Ben Affleck's Batman did a post credit scene or something because Jason Momoa leaked it. But it never got seen shown the light of day, and I guess that was supposed to lead into the Crisis on Infinite Earths film, and that was supposed to be the big reset for the DC universe going forward. I know Flash was supposed to be like that's why they did the whole Flashpoint thing. Um, but yeah, man, it started off terribly with Man of Steel, and it started off terrible, and it ended terribly with Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. And when you have like that have your cinematic universe start off really badly and then end really badly, it's going to leave a bit of a sour taste in people's mouths, and they're going to just be, when they see the DC logo, they're just going to be like, "Ugh, no, that's going to be garbage. I'm not going to see that." Luckily, though, with the new Superman film, that doesn't look like to be the case. Because I think we've had time away from DC. Like, yeah, we had Joker for all you do, and it bombed. But let's be honest, who the fuck was asking for a Joker 2? Like, who was asking for a Joker 2 for a second Joker film? Like, I wasn't asking for it. I thought the first film, was just fine. I thought the first one was just fine. It was definitely one of the better villain movies that I've seen in a while. I mean, because it was probably one of the very few that actually committed to its premise of this is about the bad guy. So we're gonna focus on the bad guy and show how it became the bad guy. Because a lot of villain movies, they tend to just try and make the bad guys like anti-heroes or something like that, and it's just like, nah, man, this is about the villain. I want to see the villain. I want to get to know the villain. I want to see what made him the villain. That's what makes the villains interesting. um, but who was asking for a sequel to that? No one. No one was asking a sequel to that. We had the Batman, the Robert Pattinson one, and that was really good. And I think that was kind of set in its own world, its own universe. We are going to be talking about the Robert Pattinson Batman at the very end, because I got a few things to say about how people, for some reason, are asking for that to be the DCU Batman thing. But we'll talk about that at the very end. But yeah, it just left about sour taste in people's mouths, and I think that's one of the main reasons why I talk about like the DCU was announced in 2022, and it's only just now taking off in 2025. That's like what, 2 years, almost. And I think that's another reason why they decided to take 2 years, because they wanted people to kind of get over the horrible terribleness that was a DCEU, and kind of try and look forward to DC properties again, and excited for DC properties again, because DC is one of the greats. Like we can make fun of them all we want to, but they're one of the greats, and I really enjoy DC. Um, but yeah, that's kind of how it started, and that's kind of how it ended. And when you have that kind of contrast, your cinematic universe isn't going to be really very well received when it begins terribly, and it isn't going to be remembered fondly when it ends terribly as well. Like it's very disappointing. It could have been Well, actually, no, I'll save that to the end. But yeah, man, it just started off terribly and ended terribly, and that's kind of what happened. That's the thing to start off with. So let's move on to the next segment of why, about the fall of the DCEU. Let me ask you guys a question, right? And you don't actually have to answer this question. Let me present you a question. When you're making a cinematic universe, when you're developing a cinematic universe, the shared universe full of different characters and people crossing over and all that good stuff, and this kind of shared world. What's the one thing that you need? Like, what's the one thing that you 100% need when building a cinematic universe? You need a plan. And DCU didn't have one. That's kind of like another big reason why I failed. It just didn't have a plan, and like they would make plans. Like I remember there was what was it called? Was it called DC All Access? It was a really weird kind of event thing where they talked about all the movies and coming up and they kind of and what their kind of release schedule was, and that Wonder Woman was coming out, and then we had a Green Lantern TV show that didn't happen, and a Cyborg movie that didn't happen, and a Flash movie that didn't happen. I think Kevin Smith was hosting it along with the guy who was the running at the time. Jeff John, is that his name? I think it's Jeff John. I mean, I've spelled his name as Jeff John in my notes, but I think that's just a typo, because yeah, massive dyslexic over here. But yeah, but every time they didn't have a plan when they first started with Man of Steel. They would throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks, and every time they came up with a plan, like at this DC All Access event or somewhere else down the line, something would go wrong, a film would be badly received, or a film would bomb, and then they would just panic and change. They would just panic and change everything and restructure everything, and that just kind of, or they'd fire whoever was in charge and then get somebody else in charge, and that was literally it. That was how it kind of always. That was kind of how it evolved, and when you don't have a clear structure or a clear plan of like where your universe is, you have to structure your universe in a way where you know it's gonna where you know it's gonna go in the future. Like you need to plan like for this kind of thing. Like like we're gonna have these movies, and we're gonna have a Justice League movie, and then this next phase we're gonna have these movies, and then all this other stuff. But they didn't have that. And every time they tried, again, like I said, like something would go wrong and they would change last minute. We kind of we don't really we criticize Warner Brothers now of having a reactionary kind of attitude in terms of filmmaking, where they will just react to things, and without actually thinking things through. They'll write films off as tax write-offs, and or like without actually thinking things through, or announce projects without thinking things through. And the DCU is kind of where it started. That's where it began. That's where I think it began. Unless they've always had this reactionary attitude, and we never picked up on it until 2013. But that's kind of where it's always been at. Like they've always had this really bizarre attitude, where they would not think things through properly, and everything like that. And the DCU, again, like every time something bad happened, plans would change, and they would kind of just throw stuff at the wall to see what stuck. And it's just kind of like you need a plan for your cinematic universe. You need a structure. You need something for it to follow. Like if you don't have anything to follow, if you don't have something for your cinematic universe to follow, what's the point? Like because obviously the audience is going to be looking at this and thinking like, where's this building up to? Like where are we going? Like what's the direction here? And it wouldn't mind so much, but like what it wouldn't mind so much like doing new things and experimenting, but like where are we going? Where's the final? Where's the end game for all this going forward? Like what's your 10-year plan? And they didn't have one. And every time they tried making one, it just never worked out. And I think it's because they didn't really make a plan until it was too late. And they didn't really make a plan for the DCEU until a few years after Man of Steel came out. And it's like you really should have done that probably before. Like you really should have done that before. And every time things changed, they would do their reactionary thing, and just completely scrap ideas and start from scratch. And the amount of times DCU really started from scratch, and people kind of like, oh, so this is where it's going, or oh, now this is where this is going. Now this is where this is now where it's going, and this is where now it's going. And it's like, what fucking direction are we taking? What's the plan? What's the plan? DCU, please tell me. I'm so confused. And I feel like that's probably why people dropped off. Because people kind of like, where's this leading to? Where's this going? What's the payoff for these films? And yeah, man, like basically to any film production companies out there, if you're still thinking of doing a cinematic universe, which I don't like why you would, because cinematic universes are kind of people talk about superhero fatigue. I personally think that we're kind of in more of a cinematic universe fatigue, where they're kind of sick and tired of cinematic universes and doing homework and having to watch this to get this to get this. Obviously, if the DCU is successful, then hopefully that fatigue will fade away and people will jump back on board with cinematic universes again. But if there's someone out there like an executive who wants to do their own cinematic universe, make a plan first. Make a plan, and it's not just DC or Warner Brothers who would do this. Thousands of other companies would you know would make cinematic universes clearly without any actual plans or ideas or structure, or like Sony's tried doing a Ghostbusters cinematic universe that was meant to kick off with the Paul Feig one, and that didn't really work out. I think they had, and then they tried doing a Spider-Man cinematic universe twice. Once with the Amazing Spider-Man 2, and then the other with those piece of shit Venom films and Morbius films and all that crap. And neither of them got off the ground. Their second go at it has pretty much ended now after crazy. But yeah, if anyone's still thinking of doing a cinematic universe, make a plan. Make a plan. And you know how you make a plan. Well, that's easy because after 2012, the Cinematic Universe playbook was pretty much written. It was bounded, it was published. You could buy it from Waterstones for like £7. I'm being facetious, of course, because that didn't happen. But it was pretty much written. Like the Cinematic Universe playbook was pretty much written, and by 2012, and by that point, I think people would have seen like, oh, okay, this is how you do a Cinematic Universe. But with DC, and other studios as well, they would always try to change the formula up and try to do their own thing. And you can, and it's like it's okay. That's okay. You can do your own thing if you want, but there's a way of doing your own thing, but still following the playbook and the structure to it. And that's what the DCU just didn't do. And that's what kind of leads back into them constantly changing things. They started off as this dark and gritty cinematic universe, and then they switched to goofy and lighthearted. They didn't have faces, they didn't have chapters, they didn't have like any specific order to like where the films get released or take place in. It just kind of just really just felt like they just had like, this is our universe and we're just gonna throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. Suicide Squad, BVS, a Justice League film that it's going to be split into two. But we're going to change last minute and get Joss Whedon in because why not? And it just kind of, and then they're like, oh, you're going to do a Green Lantern TV show, which didn't happen. We're going to do a Cyborg film that didn't happen. It was just like there was no kind of structure to it. They would kind of just, it really just felt like they were rushing. They were rushing to kind of catch up to like other cinematic universes at that time. And it's like, yeah, I get that you're starting off maybe a bit too late, but take your time. Like, take your time to develop. Take your time to plan this out. Like, you can't just rush into it just to play catch up with other companies. Like, take your time and experiment and work out like what direction you want this universe to go in. Like what the structure is. Are we doing phases? Are you doing what James Gunn's doing, which is chapters? What is each chapter going to lead to? Is it going to end with a Justice League film? Is it going to end with other films as well? And then what's the 10-year plan as well? Like, you need to take your time with this. And that's kind of what the Cinematic Universe playbook is. Like, you just have to plan this out, take your time, and everything like that. And you can still go your own way and find a new perspective of doing it and stuff. Like James Gunn has done. Like James Gunn has pretty much done a good job at doing his own thing with DC, with the DCU, but he's still clearly following the playbook. He's still having that. It's not even like a big thing. It's just have some fucking structure. Like, have some fucking structure. At least he's done that with with his first chapter, for example, God of Monsters. Like, he already the DCU has more structure to it than the DCU did in 10 years. We already kind of know where the DCU is going compared to DCEU in 10 plus years because things just kept changing and kept like not developing, just being changed right at the last minute. And there's so many things that never got resolved. Like what was it? Deathstroke. Was it Deathstroke at the end of Justice League in the post-credit scene with Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor? He was a terrible Lex Luthor, by the way. I like Jesse Eisenberg. I think he's a great actor and a great director too. A Real Pain. Watched on Disney Plus. Really good film. When you go see it in the cinema, very great. but he was not a good Lex Luthor. Already, Nicholas Hoult is already looking to be a much better Lex Luthor, and I've only seen like pieces of footage from him in like trailers or clips. Things get disappear, things get resolved, and it's just like just have a structure. Follow the playbook. It's there for a reason. Like again, you can do your own thing. You can do your own thing. That's completely fine. But follow the structure. Like have a structure. Follow the playbook. Follow the guidance. Like the guidance was actually there. It was there for you to follow. You could have followed it. You could have turned this around quite easily after Man of Steel, where you could have had a bunch of solo films. But no, they were like, no, we have to do BVS. We have to do a team up film with Ben Affleck's Batman and Henry Cavill's Superman and Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman. Then we're gonna have this really forced, like shoved thing where we have all of the other Justice League members being shown through like webcam footage or something or from a laptop, and that's gonna be like, look, it's all established, it's all, and it's just it feels so rushed, and it's like it's literally feels like really really rushed, and it does feel like catch up because it was catch up. It was kind of one of the most desperate attempts of catch up I've ever seen, and it's like no, we shouldn't have had Ben Affleck's Batman be introduced in BVS. It should have been his own film, its own standalone film. It should have gotten his own Gotham. See what that would have been like, and and actually have Ben Affleck, make the Batman film he wanted to make, and stuff like that. Like if you really wanted to try and be different, like why even start off with Man of Steel? Why not start off with like a Justice League movie, for example? Because they're all pretty well known characters. This isn't like B or C tier characters. These are like big A-listers in terms of like people know who these superheroes are. People know who Superman is. They know They definitely know who Batman is. They definitely know who Wonder Woman is. They know who the Flash is. They may not know who Cyborg is, but they definitely know who Aquaman is. And you could have started off with like a Justice League film and then maybe have like standalone solo films, but have them be prequels to that Justice League film, and then you do a Justice League 2. If you really wanted to try and be different, like maybe you could have done it that way, but no, it was this weird thing of we're gonna do the same like universe thing, but we're gonna do it our own way, and we're not gonna follow the playbook. We're gonna ignore the guidance. We're gonna rush into Justice League and all this other stuff, and it's like, nah, man, like, and it's like, no, take your time, take your time. That's what I'm liking about James Gunn. He's taking his time. He's developing the world. He's already doing more and better world building than the DCU ever did in 10 years. And bear in mind, James Gunn's DCU hasn't really started yet, and it's only just getting off the ground. And he's already done more like world building than the DCU did in 10 plus years. It is incredible to think about that. It's really incredible to think about that. Um, but yeah, man, and that was and yeah, like if the playbook's there, if the guidance is there, if the instructions are there, follow them. Like if the formula works, it works. We have formulas for a reason, and if it works, it works. And pick a direction and stick with it. Like don't just radically change things halfway through. Don't go from this is gonna be dark and gritty to silly and lighthearted. Or you can if you want to, like with certain characters. You could definitely do like dark and gritty with Batman if you wanted to. Not Superman though. Like, don't do dark and gritty with Superman. It doesn't work. It works fine for like save the dark and gritty shit for Batman. Okay, actually, you know what? That's how the DCU should have been. Okay, like have all the other characters be silly, goofy, fun, lighthearted, but save dark and gritty for Batman. Okay, save that for him because he's a dark and gritty character. Okay, I know he didn't start off that way in the Silver Age and stuff, but he's eventually turned into that. Okay, so save that shit for him. That's Batman's thing. That's not everyone else's thing. Could you imagine a dark and gritty Wonder Woman film? Like fucking hell, that would have been terrible. But then again, goofy and lighthearted didn't really work either because apparently 1984 was shit. Wonder Woman 1984 to be exact. Um, from what I heard, I never really checked it out because when I saw the reviews, I was like, I was just like, nah. If a DCEU film is getting terrible reviews, it's for a good reason. It's for a very good reason. Every time the DCU had a win, so the first three films terrible, then it had Wonder Woman, great film. It was always followed up by a loss. So Wonder Woman was followed up by Justice League, which was awful, and then the sequel was terrible. Shazam, the first Shazam was great, but the sequel sucked. It was, and this constant kind of up and down in terms of the like quality of the films was just very jarring. And I'm not saying that every film in your cinematic universe has to be perfect. You're gonna have bad films in your cinematic universes either way. There's going to be some films that won't work out, that the quality won't be there. That's just what filmmaking is. You take a leap of faith and you just pray to gods that the film turns out good. You just pray. It's literally just that. You're just praying to make sure to hope that the film turns out like fantastic. Um, but the DCU, it was like every other film. It was like up and down, up and down, up and down in terms of quality. It was just so jarring, and it was just I think audiences were just kind of just like, well, like what's the point of me going to see this? It could end up being shit. Like I don't, and you lose your audience's trust. And I think that's what started to put audiences kind of off DC, and why films like Shazam did well at the box office, but didn't do too good. They had Birds of Prey, which was critically received very well, but I think by that point people just kind of gave up on DC in general. I think people were kind of like, we don't want a DCU shared universe film. We want to go back to standalone superhero films, and that's what they did with Joker and Matt Reeves as the Batman. But yeah, this flip flopping of quality, and I think this flip flopping of quality was just, and it just showed that again there was a lack of good quality control over the DC. It was just kind of, again, it really did feel like just throw shit at the wall, see what sticks, and then if the film didn't turn out good, sometimes it was just generally like studio interference as well. Like sometimes if a film wasn't turning out good, like David Ayer's Suicide Squad, the first one, he had a very different vision for it, and then Warner Brothers came in and were like, no, we have to change all of this, reshoot this, change that, edit all this. And that's why people have been clamoring for release the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad, because that might be a little bit better. And then obviously you have James Gunn's Suicide Squad, which is a lot better, but that bombed the box office. Because I think people, well, first of all, it was because Warner Bros. Did that really stupid day and date thing where we're releasing our films in cinemas and on HBO Max the same day. Isn't that great? And it's like, well done, you've just ruined your profits. Like, fantastic. That was such a smart move, and I can't blame Warner Bros. For it completely. Disney Plus did the same thing as well. With a few of their films, but yeah, like it's just the constant kind of flip flopping of quality for your films. You need a good quality. If you're building a cinematic universe, you need a good quality control. You need someone looking over, steering the ship, making sure every film is as good as it could possibly be. And I think that's kind of what the DCU lacked, because they went through a lot, and I mean a lot of like people kind of trying to kind of steer the ship and run that ship. Before James Gunn jumped in and took over completely with Peter Safran as well. You had Zack Snyder, you had Jeff John, you had Walter Amada, and even David Zaslav as well. All trying to, and we all kind of taking over and trying to steer the ship in a different direction each time. And I feel like when you have like that many people like coming and going, like it's like the turnover is that bad. You really just need someone else. You need like the one kind of figure to, or I guess a two, or even two. Like you need like one or two people, like just to kind of be like, we want to commit, the rest of our lives to building this universe, for DC, for your brand and all that stuff. Which is kind of what I like about the current regime, with James Gunn and Peter Safran. I like how Peter Safran is kind of more of the business kind of side of things, while James Gunn's the more creative side of things. And I think that's how it should be. I think they balance it out pretty well. And James Gunn has said he wants to focus more on quality. And if the scripts aren't right, or if something isn't working, he's not going to go through with it. Like he was saying the other day, one of the films that they announced previously, he didn't say which one though, got cancelled because he because the script wasn't right. It wasn't up to the standard. They couldn't hack it, and he had to try and put it away. And he even said that in the future he doesn't want to like greenlight any projects until the scripts are done, and the scripts are of good quality and stuff, which is good. That is good quality control. We need DC. That's what DC needed. They needed good quality control over there, and it just didn't. It just didn't do it. They didn't do it. They just kind of again, we're just kind of throwing shit at the wall and just seeing what stuck, and they were just kind of like, oh no, the DC, we're DC, man, we're gonna do this our way. And there's the Suicide Squad and Harley Quinn and Joker, which didn't happen. Birds of Prey. And going back to what I said before, there was no structure to it. It was just like again, they're just kind of doing whatever the fuck they wanted, and it just didn't work out. If you weren't doing a cinematic universe, doing whatever you wanted would probably been a better option. But if you're doing a cinematic universe, You can still do what you want, but you just need good quality control. You need someone who can steer that ship and make sure that we don't have this kind of up and down kind of thing in terms of quality. You do want every project to be a really big hit with your audience and with your fans as well. And you can let the odd film slide, I guess, because again, not every project is going to be fantastic. There will be projects that will turn out bad, whether it was just bad planning or not even bad planning, like it was planned out well, it just didn't come together in the end. The director or the writers didn't see eye to eye, or something went wrong. Something went wrong behind the scenes. You're going to get your odd ones here or there. But I feel like if most of them are good, then the good will even out the bad. If you've got good quality, if you've got someone good steering that ship and good quality control, then the good will always outweigh the bad. You'll get one or two bad ones, but most of them will turn out good, and your audiences will keep coming back. I think the next thing as well is bad press and publicity also really follow the DCEU extortionately. Obviously, we know about the Ezra Miller stuff. How they fucked up their career basically, and how they kind of fucked up things for the Flash film going forward with their weird antics. I think it was Iceland they were in. Yeah, they were in Iceland. Their weird antics in Iceland, staying with a couple and then breaking into their house, then breaking into their room and stealing their passports. Which no, Ezra Miller, they actually did that stuff. That's not me making this up. They actually did that stuff, which is just bizarre. Um, and yeah, it's just like, but also other things are like Ben Affleck as well. Henry Cavill also got really screwed around by them. Um, like he was supposed to be their Superman, he was supposed to be their guy, and then something happened to where he dropped out, and then he came back for Black Adam, only to be let go again. And he had kind of the beef they all had with Joss Whedon. I think at that point, Joss Whedon was being, Joss Whedon was Joss Whedon's reputation for being a bit of a dick was starting to become a bit more apparent. You had actors from Buffy who said how badly he treated them. You had other things as well, to the point where he's not even involved in the Buffy reboot that they're doing, or Buffy revival, whatever. Which, to be fair, I don't think it should be made. Not because Joss Whedon's not involved, but because I think we need to stop. Enough with these revivals of TV shows, okay? Enough of the revivals. Let's make new things, please. Let's make new stuff. New stuff, please. Though I am looking forward to Superman, but that's the exception, okay? That's the exception. Uh, but yeah, all this bad publicity with the DCU really, I think that's what another thing that's what put people off wanting to support it, because you hear about how badly their actors were treated and how their actors dropped out and jumped back in and then only drop out again, and how some films were in really bad productions and stuff like that. And it is one of those things where you read it and you just think this is just bad. Like, what is happening over there? What is happening at DC behind the scenes? What's happening at WB to cause this to happen? Again with Ezra Miller, like the moment that video of them choking that woman in Iceland, the moment that video leaked online, they should have been on the phone with their agents. They should have been like, look, where the fuck is Ezra? Like, do they need help? Can we get them back in? And they should have just offered them, like, they should have looked after them better. They should have given the help that they needed. But they didn't. They didn't look after anyone. They didn't look at. They didn't look after Ben Affleck. They didn't look after Zack. They definitely didn't look after Zack Snyder. I can definitely give you that much as well. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of Zack Snyder as a filmmaker. Do not get me wrong, but the way DC treated him and the way Warner Brothers treated him behind the scenes, trying to push him out of Justice League and get Joss Whedon in, and obviously after everything that happened with his daughter, which if you want to know all that stuff, you can go look it up. I'm not going to talk about it because that's just too tragic and too personal. Um, but they treated him like garbage, and he was the guy who was supposed to start this whole thing off. Yeah, okay, like Man of Steel, BVS weren't good films, but I liked Watchmen. I thought Watchmen was a good film, and you see him in interviews, and he seems like a really lovely guy. He seems like a very nice guy, and I don't think I don't think he deserved to be treated like that. I think like they should have let him do his Justice League film, because you looked, and because I've literally seen people say it's better than whatever Joss Whedon wanted to do with it. And I completely see that, because Justice League 2017 is pure awful. It is pure awful. You can see the two visions kind of fighting over each other when you watch it. It is awful. Um, and yeah, man, they just didn't look after their staff. They didn't look after anyone behind there, and it's just like, look after your staff, man. Look after not just people in front of the camera, but behind the scenes too. Like, look after them. Like, because why would they want to work for you if you're not going to look after them very well? And again, this bad press kind of follows them everywhere they went. And again, with the Ezra Miller situation, everyone in the WB was kind of dangling keys in front of people's faces, being like, "Oh, shush, shush, look at this, look at this," and it's just like, it's just like stop, like look after your actors, look after your staff, look after people, and you'll be fine. People just weren't turning up because, again, like every single thing you heard about the DCU was awful, and even when there were good things about it, like when the Flash was getting a good press because each test screening was turning out more positive and everything, that was always getting drowned out by the Ezra Miller situation. You had, and then you had good films coming out like Birds of Prey, which was I know there's fans out there don't like Birds of Prey, but it was received pretty well critically. People didn't go because, and I don't think it was because of the pandemic. I think it came out just before the pandemic, like actually got into full swing. But then you had James Gunn's Suicide Squad, which was probably ruined by, again, the day and date situation. But also, I think at that point as well, people just there was so much bad press and bad publicity with DC that I think people just didn't care. I think like people were so kind of tuned out by it. They just didn't give a fuck about it, and that kind of sucked. Yeah, that was pretty much the DCEU and kind of reaching its slow demise. Mismanaged, badly handled, excuse for a cinematic universe that slowly died, and after its 10-year anniversary. Literally, its 10-year anniversary, rather than celebrating its legacy and making our last Justice League film and then moving forward, looking forward to the future, we got Aquaman: The Lost Kingdom. And, and that's why and it just sucks as well because it's mismanaged and it was badly handled, and we had all these really good films. Like, I still really like The Flash. I know people dump on it and stuff, but I still really enjoy it. And had all this nostalgia bait, Michael Keaton coming back and all that stuff, and that big kind of blown out CG multiverse thing, which doesn't look that great, to be honest. Looking back at it, but no one cared. No one, like, they brought back Michael Keaton's Batman, and no one gave a fuck. No one gave a fuck to turn up. Blue Beetle got really great reviews, and no one turned up. Joker 2 came out, and no one turned up. Though that's probably because they saw the negative critical reception and was like, no, not dealing with that. And yeah, man, it just made DC. The DCU could have been a great competitor for future cinematic universes. But it instead was mismanaged, handled badly, and it's kind of becoming a joke. Like, DC really did just become a massive joke at that point, and that's what Aquaman Lost Kingdom kind of feels like. It just feels like one big joke, haha, piss jokes and all that stuff. I'm not even joking. That's actually in Aquaman Lost Kingdom. They do the baby pissing on the guy joke like multiple times, and it's not funny. It's not funny. It's not fucking funny. And yeah, man, and it just sucks. It's like there's like wasted potential here. We could have had a great cinematic universe, but unfortunately, we had to put up with shit for 10 years before we finally getting the great cinematic universe that is the DCU, with James Gunn and Peter Safran. I think they're doing, like I said, I think they're doing a great job. I cannot wait to go watch Superman this week, whether tomorrow or sometime over the weekend when I get the time to do it. I think that film looks great. It actually looks like a Superman film. It actually feels like a Superman film. It looks like it's embracing its comic book nature. It's goofy, it's silly, it's lighthearted. David Cornsweet looks great. The cast look great. Like Rachel Brosnan looks like a way better Lois Lane than Amy Adams did. To be honest, I didn't like Amy Adams as Lois Lane either. After rewatching Man of Steel yesterday, like she's trying her best, but doesn't work. Like Rachel Brosnan, for example, she just fits Lois Lane. Like, that's like how Lois Lane should look and should act. um, and yeah, it just looks really great, and I cannot wait to see what they got next with their TV shows and what the Batman reboot's going to look like. Which, let's get on to that. I've seen some people suggesting that the Batman with Robert Pattinson and Matt Reeves' version should just be merged into the DCU and be named the DCU version, the DCU version, rather than rebooting with Brave and the Bold and doing their own thing. No, 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 absolutely fucking not. Keep them separate. Have it just be its own thing. That just wouldn't work. The ultra dark and gritty Robert Pattinson, Matt Reeves Batman universe would not merge well with the more fantasy based elements of the DCU, of James Gunn's DCU. Um, that just wouldn't work. And I think that it was much way better just keep them separate, just do your own thing with it. I know that James Gunn has admitted that he's struggling at the moment to try and come up with an idea for Batman. They haven't got a writer yet and all that stuff. But like, let him figure it out, man. Let him figure it out. I mean, Matt Reeves has taken months to like finish the script for the Batman Part Two. And he's just finished it like last week, literally last week, and just let him do his own thing. I get that merging the two would be the easiest thing in the world, but like just because it's easier doesn't mean it's the best option. Keep them both separate. Have a Batman that's still dark and that's still kind of gritty, but embraces the more fantasy elements, particularly of his rogues gallery as well. Because obviously Matt Reeves' versions are more kind of ultra realistic and stuff like that. And then we've got a Clayface movie coming out and all that stuff. I don't know if that's set in the Matt Reeves one. Like, maybe they could merge them together and stuff, but I'd rather just keep them separate. Keep them separate. And plus, I miss the days when superheroes were in their own universe, man. I miss them. Like, I miss those days. I don't dislike cinematic universes because I am looking forward to this new DC cinematic universe. But but man, I do miss the days when I've said this before. But I miss the days when superheroes were in their own universes, when they weren't crossing over other heroes, and they were kind of just by themselves on their own, and that was that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I miss those days. What happened to those days? And I would love it if we just got a trilogy of Batman films that that would just that. It's just him. He's on his own. He's by himself. He's not like crossing over with other heroes. He's literally just by himself. I miss those days, and I think that for Batman, we like just leave Matt Reeves alone, leave this universe alone, and don't merge the two together. And I think James Gunn has even said multiple times that it's not happening, and I think that's the correct option. I think him and Peter Safran are, like I said, I think they're doing a great job so far. They've already they've already done like more world building than the DCU ever did in 10 years. They've got a plan. They've got an idea. They've got a rough plan that they want to go through. I know James Gunn has said that he wants to focus more on the films rather than the plan itself and all that stuff. But I guess that's why you got Peter Safran there, because he's more, again, James Gunn's more the creative, Peter Safran's more the business. I think that's a great way to look at it. I think if you want to try something a little bit, like, it's not like they've got like a one figure who's both a creative and both business. I think splitting the two together, having the two be separate, having those two divisions, having those two sides be run by separate people. I think it's a great idea, and and they seem to be working well together. They got a good rapport, they got a good chemistry together, and everything. They seem to get along fine together from what I've seen of interviews and nice things I've said about each other. And overall, and it's all good. It just feels all good. Overall, I think the DCU is going to be fantastic. I cannot wait to watch Superman when it hits theaters tomorrow. And yeah, everyone, and that's pretty much it for this podcast, for this episode anyway. The DCU is no more, thank God, and we can actually look forward to a proper DC universe, a real DC like shared universe, one that's done right and one that's done correctly. And yeah, everyone, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you whenever I see you next.